Hello again, it's Crew Call here on the Motor Racing Network, taking you into the garage and talking to the folks that make the race cars go around the racetrack. We are so glad that you have joined us. I'm Steve Post, pit road reporter for MRN, joined by 25-time and championship-winning crew chief Todd Gordon. Hello, Todd. How are you?
I'm great. We came off a weekend of phenomenal racing. We're headed to another weekend of phenomenal racing.
Well, you're great because you didn't have to drive turn 4 at Texas, for Pete's sake. What in the wide world of sports is going on down there, Todd?
8 years into the repave, I think this place is gaining character. I love it. We see the different bankings of the two ends. 1 and 2 you have to lift for. Really flat entry to turn 1. The grass plays down there in the tri-oval. That's a whole nother story we'll touch another time. Hopefully we can do something about that. But, what a technical challenge this is for the drivers. And the piece that stands to this is that tunnel bump in 3 and 4, it gets worse the higher you get, but there's opportunity to run a little bit higher. We saw really good race car drivers be a victim of that bump. Josh Berry is leading this race by a second. In lap traffic, spins out, run across that, ends up in the wall. Kyle Busch drives his way to third. He's trying to get to a win. Crosses that bump a little bit too high, and it's off. I love the fact that there's a small window.
Yeah.
You've got to be in a certain spot, or you have to. Some guys could drive across that bump, but they all talked about, I've got to actually make my turn before it, then cross it straight, then I can turn back. Like, I love that the racetrack, it's not random, but it's technical.
Very technical, yeah. If you're turning and then straight and then turning, it's like ice. When you see a patch of ice and you see some water, it's like get her straightened up.
I think this place has kind of grown into. I mean, Joey Logano won the race running. I would call it the third groove.
Right.
I thought the third lane. He went up and ran the third lane and made the run off of 1 and 2.
Man, did he have a run
to make the pass on. I was surprised that McDowell didn't block it, but because he'd run it two laps before.
When you said block it,
he tried to block it on the straightaway. I thought he'd block it in 1 and 2.
When you said block, I said, "What were you watching?" Because he had them in the infield. They were grills.
Wasn't
gas
that
grills.
great?
It was
Wasn't
awesome.
that great? Somebody said Bagley said this week on the morning drive with Joey. He says, "I think you could have reached out to one of the motorhomes in the infield, grabbed a Coke." But that was
good stuff.
But it's two guys that both know that winning is everything.
Winning is everything. It really, truly is, and you got to get it done. All right, Team Penske doing Team Penske thing, but Todd, there were some other teams that had really, really good day. What's a couple things that stand out to you on teams that perform so well at Texas?
Well, there's 3 of them that come to mind. I'm going to go to the first one, Legacy Motor Club. I mean, they came back. Eric Jones comes out 5th. John Hunter Nemechek 8th.
Right. 2
top 10 finishes. I mean, Eric Jones drove to that 5th place finish. He just passed cars to get there. A really, really good effort by Legacy Motor Club. I think something that they can use to kind of springboard their program into where they want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Especially they're all different, but we're going to more intermediate-ish tracks with it. So I think they're good. And you're right. Eric talked post-race. I heard some of the serious coverage post-race. He talked about the frustration of having to drive and pass so many cars. Well, you clean up all those little messes that put you in the back, and you're going to have something because
you got to win everywhere. You got to win everywhere.
Absolutely.
And part of this will help them with the qualifying draw for next week.
Correct.
And that's part of what happens when you're buried in points and you don't have good finishes. We saw that on several. There were great. I mean, Joey Logano won from 27th?
Right.
But that's because he had to qualify early, which is a penalty. Right. So it's a penalty because the racetrack isn't as fast when you go out early.
Absolutely.
But, how about Ricky Stenhouse? 6th place finish.
And drove there.
And he's 15th in points?
Yes.
Like they're quietly putting themselves in position. I think he's a final. If the cutoff were today, he'd be the last.
He'd be the last one because I think Josh Berry is behind him. I think Ricky.
So that bumps the 16th out.
Yes, exactly.
They're quietly this Hayek Motorsports program. Mike Kelly, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They're doing Hayek Motorsports things.
Yeah, Mike is just rock solid. He's quiet. He's unassuming. He just shows up. He does a good job. And look at how they're performing. They're doing a really, really nice job. And they come out with a 6th place finish.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I had 2 others, and I'll say them quickly. I'm going to touch on one quickly, but Austin Dillon with a top 10 finish. Kyle Busch was running third when he spun out. I mean, RCR still there's some light.
Yep.
And they're working the right direction. So I think that's a good run. Trackhouse.
Yes.
I felt like this was the day that Trackhouse needed. When you look at it, I mean, Ross Chastain was in the mix.
Yep.
Finished second. Daniel Suarez top 10. SVG ended up lead lap finish 22nd. I think that's an improvement from where things have been. I think that's something that they can go back and have some confidence and build into Kansas with.
Yep. Good stuff. That is for sure. Some great performances by teams. Was fun to watch up front. Finish up at the front and see their smiling faces in 2 through 5 land as well. A couple of our attaboys from the preliminary events. Marty Lindley. Marty, we're going to the bench. Let's see. Kyle Larson's going to be your bench. Holy cow.
How good a team is it for Junior Motorsports when you can say, I got to put a substitute driver in. It's going to be Kyle Larson.
Yeah, so Marty Lindley and Kyle Larson picked up the win in the Xfinity Series. And Scott Zipadelli and Corey Heim, they're the 27th career win for Scott Zipadelli.
Doing Scott and Zipadelli and Corey Heim things, right?
Yes, indeed. Great stuff. And doing Team Penske things, Jonathan Hassler with a third-place finish. So, and that's what
probably disappointed with it, but we'll talk to him about it.
We'll talk to him about it. So, Jonathan Hassler, he joins us next here on Crew Call.
The NASCAR channel is available now on Tubi. Tell them we got it. 24/7 news, documentaries, with access to the exclusive NASCAR Vault. The NASCAR channel, always on, always free, only on Tubi.
Welcome back. It is Crew Call here on the Motor Racing Network. Todd Gordon, Steve Post, and let's go to Team Penske. Joining us, crew chief for Ryan Blaney, Jonathan Hassler joins us. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Doing really good. Thanks for having me today.
Always good to catch up with you. This season, you've been really good. A lot of speed, nothing to show for it. You finally have been able to string a few top fives together. Just where are you guys at, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think like you said, we've had really good speed. I think the best speed that I can remember that we've had, certainly at this point in the year at any year with this car. So certainly proud of that. We haven't strung together the finishes that we've been capable of, but the speed is certainly the hardest thing to attain. We're working on all the little deficiencies that we've had and just trying to, make sure like in years past that we peak at the right time.
So you talk about that. You made a pit crew change coming into Texas last weekend, and I didn't watch the final, I think all of them, but I thought your times looked pretty competitive. I thought they were all in the nines by the NASCAR piece that we get, but just talk about, it was a small change, but seemed to work for the whole group.
Yeah, it was small change. Changed the front tire changer. Brought Keaston France on board. Keaston was in a really cool spot. He had the opportunity to fit the 2 last year. Had some small issues, honestly, that he needed to go and work on, and he kind of took a step back a little bit to one of our farm teams, if you will, with the 38 car and went and worked on some things and has definitely, improved. And it was his time to kind of get another opportunity to be with one of the house cars. So yeah, he came on board and, we kind of looked at Talladega as a good opportunity to bring somebody in new, not quite as much pressure on pit road in those races. Unfortunately didn't get the opportunity for him to have any pit stops at all. So, Texas was really the first time those guys got to pit together, and I thought they did a really good job. So I'm excited with where that group's headed.
Jonathan, without getting into specifics with Keaston or Ryan Flores is the transfer out person as far as that goes, how intense is this? How does this all work? What's the margins here on pit stops and just how does this process work when you make the decision to juggle a few people around?
Yeah, it's tough. You think about other sports and you've got a bench of guys right there that you can, sub in and out, during the game. We don't really have that opportunity. You have your guys and for the most part, that's who you have, throughout the whole race and from week to week. So, substitutions are certainly a little bit different. and that's something that it's nice to kind of be able to experiment with a little bit of a different group, and just kind of see where guys go. We made the change with Keeston, but bringing somebody in new really challenges everybody a little bit to find a little bit more, to change kind of how you interact together. So it's certainly given our group a little bit of a spark, and I'm excited about where it's going.
Yeah. And the other piece, I think from excitement standpoint, I looked at this weekend at Texas. I thought you were arguably one of the best cars there. I would say it was up to you and probably Tyler Reddick were the two fastest that I would have picked out of the piece. You got to love the speed that you've had. I can probably put 5 races together. I would say you're the fastest car there. I feel like you've done a phenomenal job of giving Ryan speed. Take away from Texas, just as where it is and where the racetrack's kind of evolved to, seems like it's widened out a little bit in 1 and 2, and that bump in 3 and 4 tends to be a bigger player now.
Yeah, like you said, the track definitely widened out. Wasn't very wide in practice. The guys talked about missing the groove by a tire width, and you're kind of a little bit out of control. But really, right from the drop of the green flag, once you had so many cars out on the racetrack, you kind of had 2 grooves. Certainly by the second and third stage, you had 2 grooves on both ends. That I think you saw some cars that were strong in turn 1 and 2, and others that were really strong in 3 and 4. And like you said, that bump certainly caused problems for a lot of different people. The track's definitely gotten a lot of character, and races, continues, I feel like, to put on a little bit better race.
Yeah, it's impressive. And so let's look forward then. Kansas coming up. Progressively banked racetrack, a place that you guys have had a ton of speed in the past. What do you look forward to at Kansas?
Yeah, I think if you look back last year, I would say our 1.5 mile program really wasn't overly strong the first half of the year. I think for our group, once we won at Iowa, we definitely got to experiment a good bit, on the intermediates through the summer, and Kansas in the fall was probably the first true 1.5 miles where we felt like we'd learned a lot over the summer, and we showed really good speed. And I feel like that was, the building block to having all the good speed that we've had so far at the 1.5 miles. So I think that's been our strength this year. So excited to go back there. I think the track races, honestly, really similar to Homestead, where short run you need to be able to go and run the bottom, but as the run goes, you need to be able to move up as well. Obviously Homestead was really good for us, so in terms of from a speed standpoint. So yeah, excited to go to Kansas. I think we'll be really strong.
One of the things you bring in Homestead, because I look at these two being very similar, progressive banked, both places that lap times fall off and work away from you. We've seen a short pit cycle become more and more aggressive. Like if you've got an 80 lap run at Homestead, I feel like it was lap 32. I started to call people coming to pit road on an 80 lap cycle. But the end of stage 1, we saw Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin actually end up 1-2 in that stage by going to the physical midway point. Is that something, are we so aggressive now in the short pit cycle that a place like Kansas or Homestead, where there's multiple grooves in a racetrack, that the payoff of that short pit ends up being diminished?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the what's happened. The earlier you get guys starting that cycle, the more advantageous it is to just potentially run longer. And then the other thing that you got to look at is the number of guys that are on each strategy as well. I think you've seen guys doing the short pit sooner, but I also think you've seen a lot of guys back in the pack do more of the even split. So it's definitely a moving target. I feel like you certainly want to be on one end or the other, not in the middle. And there are a lot of different factors to kind of what's going to work out. Where you're running on track. It's certainly not a one size fits all solution to that.
It is. It's always fascinating to see when you guys pull the trigger on those pit stops. That's for sure. When we get into a run like that, Jonathan, we've talked a little bit about Texas. We've talked about Kansas, but when I look at this 5-race point stretch. Let's set aside North Wilkesboro, pull North Wilkesboro out of this. When you look at it, Texas, Kansas, Charlotte, Nashville, Michigan stretch, you say you're pretty good on intermediate tracks. You feel really good about it, but how much can you? They're all different. We understand that. One does not look. Some look the same. But how much do you build from one to the other, or over this 5-race stretch?
Yeah, I think. I think one of the things that I certainly try to do is make sure that we're learning, week in and week out from the past race, and never, just like this week for Kansas, we won't be fully dialed in for what we're going to run for Kansas until we review, what we had at Texas and what was better and what was worse, and try to, learn a little bit from each and every week. And like you said, with all these tracks being, the intermediate package, fairly similar in length, certainly they have some differences as well, and you got to try to factor that in. But I think we'll continue to snowball and hopefully continue to make our intermediate package even better.
What kind of things go into, we're going to Kansas, a progressively banked racetrack where you've got, 17, 18 degrees at the bottom and almost 20 up to the wall. What kind of things go into that to make, because I felt like you with Ryan have been able to run the bottom at Kansas longer than most people. I think that's been a strength. Car setup, with the different loading bottom to top, how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think, I think the loading from bottom to top is important. I think, one of the things that's really important and that's probably consistent across all the intermediate tracks is just the way the air changes. I think earlier in the run, you're really stacked in behind a lot of dirty air. So you need your car to be, relatively balanced in that configuration. But then, as the run goes and you get cleaner air, you need to have balance, in that respect as well, too. So I think that's probably been the biggest thing for us to focus on is just, making sure your car handles well in a variety of different aero configurations.
Big picture, Team Penske, obviously we've talked about your performance, your speed, lack of results as far as that goes. When we look at the last two races, Team Penske has won, with Austin Cindric winning at Talladega and Joey and Paul Wolfe winning at Kansas. Big picture, it seems to me like you're ahead of schedule. If we look at last year, this was June of last year, but big picture, is everything well up there in Mooresville? How are you feeling big picture as far as the corporate picture goes?
Yeah, like you said, we've gotten, guys locked into the playoffs sooner than we have in years past. Like I talked about for us last year, I think as you get guys locked in, you certainly, have a lot more ability to kind of experiment and learn, be a little bit, more aggressive with a lot of different things. And I think that's just going to help the whole company continue to improve and continue to have speed. I think you really, like I said, we've had, you look at 2024, and I think we had speed at short tracks earlier in the year, and we got the opportunity to kind of experiment on the intermediates and make speed. This year we've had, certainly speed at the intermediates, and short tracks haven't been bad. I think, road courses are certainly an area that we've struggled, an area that, we're going to have a lot of races here in the summer, and I hope, those guys getting wins is an opportunity for us to all help that side of the program as well.
Heading to Kansas this weekend, it's the last of the racetracks that will come back into the playoffs. Is it any different preparing for this weekend, or even post-race kind of digesting the weekend and trying to be prepared for a pretty important playoff race?
Yeah, I think, we really just try to have a, consistent approach week in and week out, regardless of whether it's a playoff race or not. There's always, things that you can do to apply to the program that'll help you in the playoffs. So, I don't know, maybe you give it a little bit more focus because it's a playoff race, but for the most part, so just that, sound philosophy of, preparing from each and every week, kind of just building on the database, making sure you spend Monday every week, looking back on the previous day and understanding the things you did well and the things you didn't do so well, and have a game plan for what you do different if you came back to that track again, and just, rinse and repeat and do that, week in and week out, and continue to get better.
As you watch this piece, and I said it earlier, I feel like I could name 5 racetracks that I felt like you were the fastest race car so far this year, and the other ones you're probably in the top 10 anyway. The speed that you and Ryan have been able to build together, just What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different things. I certainly think he is, incredibly talented, and he's able to pass, I think, in places that a lot of guys can't. I think you see that at a variety of different racetracks. You see it at the aero tracks where, people talk about you just, being so track position sensitive. And from an aero standpoint, I think you see it at the short tracks. He was able to pass at Bowman Gray when a lot of people couldn't. So I certainly think that's a strength of his, and I don't know, for me, like I said, I think that focus of just trying to make sure you learn from every week and continue to improve has made us, good across a variety of different tracks.
It is. It really is fun to watch. That is for sure. Jonathan, we are grateful for the time you joining us here today. Can't wait to see what you guys have at Kansas and on throughout, but appreciate joining us here on Crew Call.
Thank you all very much.
Jonathan Hassler from Team Penske, crew chief for Ryan Blaney. Stay with us. More Crew Call in just a moment.
3, 2, 1, start your engine.
The NASCAR channel is streaming now, exclusively on Tubi. Tell them we got it. Go deeper into NASCAR with 24/7 news, documentaries, and explore the vault of timeless NASCAR stories and unforgettable races. From crushing defeats to the thrill of victory.
Go, baby!
The NASCAR channel, always on, always free. Only on Tubi.
Crew Call rolling along here on the Motor Racing Network. Todd Gordon and Steve Post. And Todd, we had a chance to talk, obviously, with Jonathan about Kansas. You've had success there. You love that racetrack as well. What are the nuts and bolts that you're looking at taking to Kansas this week?
Yeah, the thing that I always look at Kansas, running the wall, especially I looked at the weather. It's going to be low 80s, sunny,
okay,
nice and slick. That'll mean tire lap time degradation. How about that? This is a place that running the wall is kind of baited into making speed. The thing I look for out of who's going to be good here, the guys that can run lanes other than running the wall.
Yeah.
I go back to the Kurt Busch win, and I kind of called that one from the booth on practice day because Kurt could run a lane down off the wall and run lap time. Well, I look for guys who can move around. Ryan Blaney's one of those guys. If you look back to last year, I felt like he wrapped the bottom down there on the paint a lot longer into the run than most guys could. I think that's going to be something. I'm looking for guys that can move around the racetrack and make speed.
I found Jonathan Hassler's comments interesting about early in the run with dirty air versus late in the run, and that's just something that radio guy doesn't think about much. But it really is, as the field is in a tight compact, and then you get in a long run, everyone's all the way around the racetrack.
Yeah, it's just huge, and you hear drivers and crew chiefs talk about it like. The air that you run in at 30th is different than the air you run in at 25th, is different than 20th, is different than 15th, is different than 12th. I mean, when you get towards the front, it's like 2 positions makes a difference. And to his point, I hadn't thought of it that way, but in a restart, 10th is like 30th placed air.
Yeah, there's the point, yeah.
Because you've got so much disruption right in front of you, within seconds of you. Once the race gets run out and strung out, the air gets more organized for that guy. So that's a really good. That's part of why Jonathan makes so much speed in his cars. Is he's aware of all the details and does a really good job with it.
Yeah, really, truly does. Great stuff, that's for sure. And I'm kind of with you on that. I wouldn't be shocked if Jonathan Hassler doesn't park that car in victory lane here over the next couple of weeks. That team, your point, that they've been, you can only be so good so many times before the wheels don't fall off, for lack of a better term.
I go back to intermediate racetracks, but you go back to Vegas, and Jonathan was aggressive on right rear tire pressure in practice. And ended up back in the car in defense. They didn't qualify, started at the back, and still, like, they passed more cars at Vegas than anybody.
Yeah.
They were the best car that never got to show it.
Right.
Homestead, they were the best car. Like, long run speed, just phenomenal.
Darlington, they were lights out fast.
Lost 19 spots on pit road and still drove to the lead.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm a firm believer if you do that enough times, one of these times it's going to work out.
And I like the fact that and I know the whole pit crew there, and Skip Flora is a great guy and good changer,
all of ours, yes.
Sometimes you just have to make a change to kind of, as Jonathan talked about, to spur a little bit of angst in everybody else in the crew.
Yeah.
And I talked to a couple of guys there, and they didn't feel like there was one spot that was lacking for them. But this one change, I think, has affected everybody. They put together a string of 9-second stops this weekend, and that's, to me, That's where they need to be.
See, I like what you just said there. Okay, Skip is everybody's buddy. We all know Skip. He does such a great job. I had him in my mind as potentially untouchable as far as performance. I mean, performance is obviously, you can tell that. But I agree with that. He's not untouchable. Nobody's untouchable on any one of these teams.
Professional sports.
And make a change. And that team seemed to pick up really well. And you know what? Skip was with the 38 car. I think 38 cars over at Front Row Motorsports now. Stay tuned, because he very well could be back with one of the house cars if another change is needed somewhere there.
I like Jonathan's analogy that in a basketball game, if somebody's just cold, well, you put a sub in for him. And this is kind of that type of move too. So I like where they're at. I like their opportunities. They haven't really finished a race the way I think they should have yet this year. And they're still 7th in points.
They're solid.
This is a group that when they and I think they're very close to it, but when they do, they're going to be pretty special.
Well, we'll see what happens with it. It is a big weekend coming up at Kansas. We start our coverage Friday night at 8 o'clock. It's the Tide 150 for the ARCA Menard Series. Saturday, 4:30 in the afternoon, NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying. 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. The NASCAR Racing Network has coverage of that. We'll be there doing that as well. Sunday, 2 o'clock, it is the Advent Health 400 NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas. Love it. If you are out in the Midwest, go to the racetrack. Get to the racetrack. This is a great, great facility, great area, great barbecue, great eats. I mean, everything is good about Kansas. If you're in the Midwest, you need to make it there this weekend.
Including the weather.
And the weather's going to be
upper 70s on Saturday and sunny, low 80s and sunny on Sunday. It's going to be a great, phenomenal place, and love the entire area, Kansas City area.
It really, truly is good. He's Todd Gordon. I'm Steve Post. We are grateful for Jonathan Hassler joining us, but more important than all of that, thank you for joining us here this time on Crew Call on the Motor Racing Network.